പോയിടാം നാം ലോകം മുഴുവനും, പോയിടാം സുവിശേഷവുമായി, പോയിടാം നാം യേശുവിനായി സാക്ഷികളായിടാം, പോയിടാം നാം.
A reading from the first book of Kings, chapter 7. Solomon was building his own house 13 years, and he finished his entire house. He built the house of the forest of the Lebanon, 100 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, and 30 cubits high, built on 4 rows of cedar pillar, with cedar beams on the pillar. It was roofed with cedar on the 45 rafters, 15 in each row, which were on the pillar. There were window frames in the 3 rows, facing each other in the 3 rows. All the doorways and doorposts had 14-sided frame, opposite, facing each other in the 3 rows. He made the hall of pillars 50 cubits long and 30 cubits wide. There was a porch in front with pillars and a canopy in front of them. He made the hall of the throne where he was pronounced judgment, the hall of justice, covered with cedar from floor to floor. His own house, where he would reside, in the other court, back of the hall, was of the same construction. Solomon also made a house like this hall for Pharaoh's daughter, whom he had taken in marriage. All these were made of costly stones, cut according to measure, sawed from saw, back and front, from the foundation to the coping, and from outside to the great court. The foundation was of costly stones, huge stones, stones of 8 and 10 cubits. There were costly stones above, cut to measure, and cedar wood. The great court had 3 courses of dressed stone to 1 layer of cedar, beams all around. So had the inner court of the house of the Lord and the vestibule of the house. Now King Solomon invited and received Hiram from Tyre. He was the son of a widow of the tribe of Naphtali, whose father, a man of Tyre, had been an artisan in bronze. He was of skill, intelligence, and knowledge in working bronze. He came to King Solomon and did all his work. He cast 2 pillars of bronze. 18 cubits was the height of the one, and a cord of 12 cubits would encircle it. The second pillar was the same. He also made 2 capitals of molten bronze to set on the top of the pillar. The height of the one capital was 5 cubits, and the height of the other capital was 5 cubits. There were nets of checker work with wrought of chain work for the capitals on the top of the pillars, 7 for the one capital and 7 for the other capital. He made the columns with 2 rows around each lattice work to cover the capitals that were above the pomegranate. He did the same with the other capital. Now, the capitals that were on the top of the pillar in the vestibule were of lily work, 4 cubits high. The capitals were on the 2 pillars and also above the rounded projection that was beside the lattice work. There were 200 pomegranate in row all around, and so with the other capital. He set up the pillar at the vestibule of the temple. He set up the pillar on the south and called it Jachin. And he set up the pillar on the north and called it Boz. On the top of the pillar was lily work. Thus, the work of the pillars was finished. Then he made the molten sea. It was round, 10 cubits from brim to brim, and 5 cubits high. A line of 30 cubits would encircle it completely. Under its brim were panels all around it, each of 10 cubits, surrounding the sea. There were 2 rows of panels cast when it was cast. It stood on 12 oxen, 3 facing north, 3 facing west, 3 facing south, and 3 facing east, and the sea was set on them. The hind quarters of each were towards the inside. Its thickness was a handbreadth. Its brim was made like the brim of a cup. Like the flower of a lily, it held 2,000 buds. He also made the 10 stands of bronze. Each stand was 4 cubits long, 4 cubits wide, and 3 cubits high. This was the construction of the stand. They had borders. The borders were within the frame. On the borders that were set in the frame were lion, oxen, and cherubim. On the frame, both above and below the lion and the oxen, there were wreaths of bead work. Each stand had 4 bronze wheels, an axle of bronze at the 4 corners with supports for a basin. The supports were cast with wrought at the side of each. Its opening was within the crown, whose height was 1 cubit. Its opening was round as the pedestal is made. It was a cubit and a half wide. As its opening, there were carvings. The carvings, its borders, were 4-sided and not rounded. The 4 wheels were underneath the borders. The axle of the wheel were in the stand, and the height of a wheel was a cubit and a half. The wheels were made like a chariot wheel. Their axle, their rim, their spoke, and their hubs were all cast. There were 4 supports at the 4 corners of each stand. The supports were of one piece with the stand. On the top of the stand there was a round band half a cubit high. On the top of the stand its says and its borders were of one piece with it. On the surface of it stays, and on its borders he carved cherubim, lion, and palm tree, where each had space with breadth all around. In this way he made the 10 stands. All of them were cast alike, with the same size and the same form. He made 10 basins of bronze. Each basin held 40 baths. Each basin measured 4 cubits. There was a basin for each of the 10 stands. He set 5 of the stands on the south side of the house and 5 on the north side of the house, and he set the sea on the southeast corner of the house. Hiram also made the pots, the shovels, and the basin. So Hiram finished all the work that he did for the king Solomon on the house of the Lord. The 2 pillars, the 2 bowls of the capitals that were on the top of the pillar, the 2 lattice work to cover the 2 bowls of the capitals that were on the top of the pillars, the 400 pomegranate for the 2 lattice work, 2 rows of pomegranate for each lattice work to cover the 2 bowls of the capital that were on the pillar, the 10 stands, the 10 basin on the stand, the 1 sea, and the 12 oxen underneath the sea. The pots, the shovels, and the basin, All these vessels had Hiram made for King Solomon for the house of the Lord, were of burnished bronze. In the plain of the Jordan, the king cast them in the clay ground between Succoth and Zerethan. Solomon left all the vessels unweighed, because there were so many of them, the weight of the bronze was not determined. So Solomon made all the vessels that were in the house of the Lord, the golden altar, the golden table for the bread of the presence, the lampstand of pure gold, 5 on the south side and 5 on the north, in front of the inner sanctuary. The flowers, the lamps, and the thongs of gold, the cups, snuffer, basin, dishes for incense, and firepan of pure gold. The socket for the doors of the innermost part of the house, the most holy place, and for the doors of the nave of the temple of gold. Thus, all the work that King Solomon did on the house of the Lord was finished. Solomon brought in the things that his father David had dedicated, the silver, the gold, and the vessels, and stored them in the treasuries of the house of the Lord. This is the word of the Lord.
പോയിടാം നാം ലോകം മുഴുവനും പോയിടാം സുവിശേഷവുമായി പോയിടാം നാം